Well, this is just a little bonus video to share something exciting with you guys. It's a little bit of a sneak preview. So the other night, my colleague Ben Williams and I, he's a Sanskritist, a scholar of Abhinavagupta, and a professor at Naropa University in Boulder, and a wonderful guy, brilliant Sanskritist as well. And we translate together sometimes, and it's that's quite a privilege because we complement each other quite well. Things that I don't get, he gets, and things he doesn't get, I get usually, and it's pretty awesome. Now, the other night we got together and translated an entire Sanskrit text, which actually sounds like a bigger brag than it really is, because this text is only 20 verses long, or 24 verses long. But still, it was pretty awesome to translate it in one go. Now, why am I telling you about this? Because the text is a commentary on 3 verses of the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra. And guess who it's by? It's by Vīranātha, aka Vamana-natha, aka Hrasvanātha, the author of The Blossoming of Innate Awareness. The text we did a complete course on here, on the Facebook group and on YouTube, whatever that was, a year and a half ago. So the same guy who wrote The Blossoming of Innate Awareness, very interesting human. He was the Minister of War and Peace under King Yashaskara in 9th century Kashmir. And of course, a very accomplished tantrika, the devotee and successor of the great female guru of the Krama lineage known as the goddess K, for Keyuravati. So, and again, this is, unfortunately, we don't have any writings from the goddess K, unless she wrote the VBT itself. Who knows? That's a mystery. But we do have these writings from her direct disciple and successor, Vīranātha. Anyway, so Vīranātha, as well as writing The Blossoming of Innate Awareness, the Svabododaya Manjari, or Swaboda Manjari, he also wrote this text that Ben Williams and I translated, called the Dvaya-sampatti-varttika, which we could translate as the teaching on the fulfillment of the two. The fulfillment of the two, which the title itself contains a mystery that I won't reveal right now. Well, I can reveal a little bit of it, which is there's double meanings. There's several meanings of this phrase, the fulfillment of the two. But one of the meanings has to do with the realization of oneself as both Shiva and Shakti, that Shiva and Shakti are 2 aspects of a single reality of divine consciousness, which you are. So that's just one of the meanings of this phrase, the fulfillment of the two, where fulfillment also means realization, the realization that fulfills. Now, as I mentioned, the text, the short text, is a commentary on 3 verses of the Vijñāna-bhairava. And here's what's interesting, because the Vijñāna-bhairava is presents itself as a scripture, right? Spoken by God, spoken by Bhairava and Bhairavi, Shiva Shakti, right? But Vīranātha keeps referring to it as a text revealed by, practiced by, and honored by the Siddhas, meaning the realized masters of who came before, meaning real human beings, as opposed to a divine revelation. And this is part of a Krama teaching, Krama lineage teaching, that emphasizes self-realized humans over and above deities. So Siddhas and Mahasiddhas, and that emphasis carried over to some branches of Tantric Buddhism as well. So what I want to share is just this where does he say it? Yes. He refers to the Vijñāna-bhairava as the scripture honored and practiced by the Siddhas. And he says, this teaching is declared to have been sung by the Siddhas themselves. Through this method, those completely perfected ones attained the domain of the yoginis. So we notice two things. Again, this idea that the Vijñāna-bhairava could be, if we take Vīranātha's word for it, could be really a compilation of teachings and transmissions from realized masters that was sort of put together as a scripture, which makes a lot of sense. It would explain a lot of things. But also he talks about how, through this method taught in the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra, those siddhas, those completely perfected ones, samsiddhas, attained the domain of the yoginis. So here, the domain of the yoginis is a phrase that denotes highest realization. Notice that in this language of the Krama lineage, highest realization is not denoted by the usual term like Paramashiva, right? It's the domain of the yoginis. So that is a very fascinating phrase, right, that connects this very highly evolved and sophisticated tradition all the way down to these shamanic roots, down, just metaphorically speaking, to a much less sophisticated but very vital and vigorous and raw and powerful shamanic tradition. So the Krama lineage is very interesting in that way. It's incredibly sophisticated, but it never loses sight of its what we might call shamanic roots, using that term somewhat broadly, and I can't get into right now why it's appropriate, maybe in another video. So Vīranātha says, this is verse 3 and 4 of the text of this one I'm telling you about, established in the domain of the supportless, niradhara, right? That word that recurs in the VBT, meaning that which requires nothing outside of itself, that essence nature which needs no support, which has no substratum other than itself, right? So established in the domain of the supportless, the yogi in this way, in this tradition, attains the fulfillment of the two, Dvaya-sampatti. This pure fulfillment is manifest in this very world, in this very life, for that precious yogi. Having discovered the inner meaning of the pair of verses proclaimed in the oral tradition of the Siddhas. So what's he referring to there? Let me copy and paste this, because I understand it's hard to follow Sanskrit translations if you aren't seeing what I'm talking about. Okay. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put it in the comments below. Okay, this is again from this unpublished text, the Dvaya-sampatti by Vīranātha. Established in the domain of the supportless, the practitioner attains the fulfillment of the two. This very pure fulfillment is manifest in this very world for that precious yogi. That's you. Having discovered the inner meaning of the pair of verses proclaimed in the oral tradition of the Siddhas. What pair of verses? What is he talking about? This is very interesting. Oh my gosh, it turns out to be verses 113 and 114 of the Vijñāna-bhairava-tantra. And he says clearly here, proclaimed in the oral tradition, the Vaktragama, the oral tradition of the Siddhas. Now, there's some variations on this reading in the manuscripts, but we have the word Vaktragama clearly, right? The oral tradition. So that implies that the VBT was an oral teaching from realized masters before it was codified as a scripture, and that this was recent enough in living memory that Vīranātha knows this, writing in, probably somewhere around 850 to 875. So he actually is commenting in this text on 3 verses of the VBT, 90 plus these 2. And verse 90 is centrally important to his whole exposition. And yet, for whatever reason, he emphasizes a pair, maybe because he wants to do this punning with the various pairs, Shiva Shakti, another pair that I don't want to give away right now, and the pair of verses. So even though VBT 90 is really important in his discourse, he names the pair as 113, 114 VBT. Now, what's the purpose of this share? Well, it's just fun to share with you guys about new translation work. And I'm going to share this text with those of you on Patreon. So if that motivates you to sign up for Patreon, that's cool. And eventually it will be published in one form or another. Now, but the other reason to share this with you is to get you excited, because we're coming up on these verses in our VBT course. We just got up to verse 85. So we're just coming up on these. So so interesting to know how central Vīranātha took these verses, and how he actually explains how with just 2 or 3 verses of the VBT, that's enough to attain total self-realization. And he shows you, he takes you through it. He shows you how, just from 2 or 3 verses of this Tantric Yoga masterpiece, that if you truly understood them, right, then that would be all you need. Okay, so can I quote anything else without giving it away? Yes, I just want to mention also, lastly, that this text by Vīranātha is one of the first, and we have to look into it, but possibly the first non-scriptural text, meaning text by a known human author, to use the word Kundalini. Very exciting stuff. So he calls it the independent sovereign power, Aishwari Shakti, Kundalini, right? Now the exact word Kundalini is not used in the VBT, but there are verses that come later towards the end of the text that are clearly talking about what would soon be called Kundalini. And so again, it's very possible that this usage of the term by Vīranātha is the very first usage of the term in a non-scriptural text. So he says that Kundalini is the fundamental seed whose form, or which manifests as both nada and bindu. Fascinating definition of Kundalini as that seed, metaphorical seed, which manifests as both nada and bindu, meaning resonance and light. Actually, these terms are untranslatable, because we don't have English equivalents, and we'll get into them more in another video. But actually, we did talk about them right at the beginning of the VBT course as well. These terms, nada and bindu. So Kundalini here is the independent sovereign power which exists as the fundamental seed, the underlying thing that's not a thing, The underlying principle, which manifests as both nada and bindu, and which is permeated by, inseparable from, prana shakti. It's not reducible. Kundalini is not reducible to prana shakti, but it's also inseparable from prana shakti, life force energy. And it is always, Kundalini is always perceived by yogis as shining with their own innate luminosity. And Kundalini is the eternal mother of the universe. Quoting, again, direct from the text. Okay, so that's your preview of this exciting work. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you were okay with how much I shared and how much I didn't share. I don't want you to get frustrated, but we're still working on this text, and both Ben and I translated it, so I can't give the game away all by myself. Okay, so that's some fascinating stuff, and I hope you enjoyed that, and also that you feel excited as I do to be part of this work, which is delving into the primary sources of not just me, not just Ben. There's like a dozen people doing this work of breaking new ground and delving into these primary sources, connecting them to real experience, and finding the through lines from 1300 years ago all the way up to our gurus and teachers of today. Om.